Hey, this book, it's going to change lives. Do you know
You think?
this? Yeah,
You
I do.
think?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. That actually kind of gives me chills. So I'm Dr. J. I really, this is a big question for a lot of people, and I wanted to share with you too. I have like when my son's 14, but when marijuana really started getting to become legal, he started asking questions, and I was like, I didn't know how to answer. So I was wondering today too if we could kind of go through that and how to talk to young bucks about it. And
Absolutely.
thank
I
you,
mean,
thank you.
I have three daughters of my own, and they're 24,
Yep.
21, and 16. And so it is definitely a huge topic. And I live in Manhattan, the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Okay.
Everywhere you go, you smell it.
Yep. Yep.
Everywhere. You cannot, and you're in Knoxville, correct?
I'm in Knoxville. It's illegal here. We have CBD.
Ah, well,
Um,
illegal, even medically illegal.
yeah, totally illegal. So it's well, there's the one that's approved, the Miradol or something like that. I can't remember what it's
Right.
called.
Okay. So there are a couple of FDA approved
Right.
medications. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, for
Marinol,
seizures. It's the ones
Epidiolex,
for the seizures.
Epidiolex, which is a huge,
Yep.
but that is only CBD. So
Yeah. Oh,
meaning there's no THC in it at all. None
yeah.
of the, the psychoactive component. But it's huge that we have it because
Yes.
I mean, cannabis is federally illegal, and that is what is really hindering the research to be done into it. And that's why physicians like myself, don't want to prescribe it and really have no clue about it. So this book was really written to help pretty much and educate and to increase awareness of parents, of kids, of teachers, of and even physicians who want to learn more. I
Yeah.
mean, I needed to know more myself. And I mean, it was a 3.5 year process. And I'm very pragmatic about it. It's out there, it's not going away.
Yep.
And people need to understand it better.
So that was that's kind of my thing too, is that it's going to be there. Last time I went to Denver, it was like you just can't get away from their factories. I mean, the whole place smelled like it's like it. And
Yeah.
so, how do we start this conversation? How do we start the conversation between, and I love this. So I'm going to go through a couple of quotes from the book, if that's okay, and just kind of, and kind of pick your brain.
Do you know where I work? I work at Amen Clinic. I know
I
you know
do,
Daniel Amen.
and so I so much respect your work too, and I so much respect the Amen Clinic work, and it's really an honor to have you here. So
Oh, thank
seriously,
you.
yeah,
Well, Daniel Amen has been, I mean, he was behind the writing of this book from the beginning, and you know that he is very much, he's come around in an interesting way that he says that marijuana definitely impacts the developing brain, and
yes.
it very well can. And that's why I do not recommend that anybody under their mid-20s, when the brain is, stop when the brain is still developing, you do not want to be impacting your brain with any kind of substance, right?
That's good.
So that, like, this was my side gig. Writing this book was my side gig.
Wow.
I know. I mean, I'm a full-time, psychiatrist for Amen Clinic, which is amazing too. So it's been just a dream.
It's really, it's beautiful. Yeah. And the way that the book, I put this, I love that the way that this book is set up, because it's got the science behind it, but it's also a story that you're telling here, and it's experiences that people are going through. It's like, it's really cool. And then everything gets backed up by data that we do have. But I was left, and I think that you were left too, even after it, is that we still need more research on this. I mean, and we should go full-fledged into the research. Let's do this. And I don't know. So you put this, the myth of harmfulness is that all marijuana is harmful, and the myth of harmlessness is that all marijuana is harmless. How do we know the difference, and how do we start to process, like, if it's going to be harmful or good for me?
Well, the way I start thinking about it is that nobody under the age of 25 or less should be smoking, vaping, using edibles, or doing any substances of abuse. The brain is still developing up until that point. We want to protect our brains. We want to be preventative, and we want to keep our brains now, but also for young people, 70, 80 years in the future. You don't want to be harming your brain. But so there's two parts to it. There's medical cannabis and there's recreational cannabis. And I'm not a proponent of recreational cannabis. I'm a proponent in certain ways for medical cannabis, meaning you have a dispensary. You have to be certified by a physician in order to go and get a medical card and be able to go into a dispensary where you know what you're getting.
Necessary for a medical diagnosis to receive marijuana.
Correct. And the other thing is, because it's not federally legal, it's done by each state differently. In your state, Tennessee, it's not even medically legal. True. Or it's certainly not recreationally legal, but not medically legal. But in my state, New York, it is. And so, I mean, there are very different conditions that you're allowed to certify patients for in different states. I mean, but the major ones from New York are things like chronic pain or PTSD or ALS or inflammatory bowel, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, things like that. Huntington's, very severe diseases, chemo,
chronic problems
cancer,
as well.
Chronic problems, absolutely. Chemo, the nausea and vomiting that might occur with chemo for cancer treatment, things like that.
I noticed that when I was reading through here too, and what I got concerned about was, and I am concerned about the recreational use too, because there's what I was reading was that, especially if you already are going through or have had experience with like depression or anxiety, it can be some very bad news to start using marijuana. Can you discuss some of that and like why is that?
Well, absolutely. Certainly, I mean, smoking or vaping, even using edibles, they impact certain areas of the brain, right? And I mean, what you want to be aware of is certainly one of the biggest areas of the brain that you're impacting are your frontal lobes, which are the area of good decision making and impulse control and executive functioning, right? And things like that. I mean, if marijuana is going to impact those areas, you definitely, you want to know, you want to have your frontal lobes intact, right? Mm-hmm. The other things are like your cerebellum, that's your coordination and movement, right? So you might be, your balance might be off. You don't want to be driving if your balance is off. And also if your perception, that's from the amygdala. If your perceptions, if you have, if it may cause, I've seen it cause hallucinations, even psychosis or anxiety, depression, things like that. Wow. But also, you want to be aware, and kids are not thinking about it. Kids are very influenced by peer pressure and what their friends are doing, or even kids may think about self-medicating, right? If they do have things like anxiety or depression, from other things. But you definitely want to be aware of that. And as a parent, you have to be aware, and you have to talk to your kids.
So, and you're more likely to, if you, I guess what I'm understanding is that if you start using before the age of 25, before your brain's developed, you're more likely to develop a substance abuse problem with it, right? Like 4 to 7 times, I think was a stat from the book.
Yes, and also the risk of psychosis is also much greater. Now that we don't know whether psychosis would have happened anyway, or whether it would have just been kicked off much earlier by using something like cannabis or anything else. But that is a very it's a scary thing and a big problem that I've actually seen in my practice.
What does that look like? What does that look like when somebody has a marijuana-induced psychosis?
It's extreme paranoia that does not go away after a few hours of being in their system. I've seen it in very young people, late teens, early 20s, and it's scary. And I mean, it scares them, it scares their parents, and it can lead to them having to be put on very strong medications that you don't want to do that.
Very scary.
To a
So
kid.
yeah, and you're already trying to avoid medications with healing people anyways, and then we take something that makes it worse, and now to get that, to pull that person out of what we're doing, what they're doing, now we actually have to medicate them. That's a sad.
Well,
Why
the
do
other
we
thing is
think
that
that
cannabis
go ahead.
is so much more potent now than it ever was in
Yep.
the 70s, 80s, even 90s. Like it was in the single digit percentages for potency. And now it can be as high as 20 to 30% THC in these
Wow.
products. That is scary.
And you
And
can
people
get that
don't realize.
recreationally or medicinally, right? I mean, so there's people out there that are taking a medical dose of marijuana recreationally and not knowing exactly what it's going to do to them. The delivery systems are different as well. Like do you see more of these problems with people that smoke cannabis versus that they are doing edibles or another way?
Well, the problem is that there's not enough research out there. And what have I seen that's come to me clinically? That's where much of my research comes from and understanding of it. Well, definitely the vaping and smoking, they get into your brain and body much faster, right?
Okay.
It's in there faster, and it often gets out faster. Edibles are different. Edibles, capsules, tinctures, they're slightly slower too. They take longer, but they may last longer. So people they make the mistake of taking an edible and they feel nothing in 15 minutes or so when they take another, and then maybe even another, and they get very, very sick.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit, like this specific kind of research that you're doing and that you're looking at, why did you get into this specific? You could study mushrooms, you could study everything. But why marijuana and why you?
Well, I'm probably the most unlikely person to do this, and my children, my daughters laugh at me, but I had a patient who came to me about 4.5 years ago and was very curious about it because she said that she was in Denver. She tried an edible that helped her sleep. She didn't need her sleep medication anymore. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was skeptical for sure.
Okay.
But I asked her what was it? And she actually showed me a picture of a chocolate bar that she'd gotten in a Denver medical dispensary, and actually a recreational dispensary because it was recreationally legal in Colorado. And that she said that this helped her. She also took it within reason. She took a very small amount. And it helped her. And she asked me, did I know anything about it? And I said, really, no. I said, I knew that it was medically legal in the state where I live, in New York State, but I didn't know. And she said, could I prescribe it for her? I didn't know. And so that started it all off. So it started in an interesting way that she piqued my curiosity about it. Yeah. And then I started learning about it that way.
And so did you know that there were like different types of marijuana before you got started? Like there were, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know, just all the legalities of it and how, every state was different. And I knew that it was illegal and that, that federally, there were lots of issues that way.
Because it was illegal, did you already have a negative thought process on marijuana from the beginning? Had you or had you given it ever a chance before? Not necessarily personally, but just in people's lives.
Yeah, I don't see that it's about me. I see that it's about how I educate others. And definitely, I mean, I definitely had heard how it could be helpful for PTSD in vets, and how that was something that was very interesting to me, for PTSD or chronic pain. I had a few patients who then started to tell me about their use. So as I started to learn more, I actually started to ask more questions. I started to go to medical conferences. And I actually joined, Amen Clinic, where I work, with Daniel Amen. And we do our special imaging studies called SPECT scans, where we look at the brain. And, Daniel and all the research we've done has definitely shown that it can very much negatively impact the brain, in heavy users, high potency, heavy chronic users. But I wanted to know, could it be helpful in any way for people? So that's why I started going to conferences and trying to learn about it.
So are you more likely to prescribe now versus before?
Well, like I said, it has to be for certain conditions. I can't, like in New York State, it's not a certifiable condition for anxiety or for insomnia. Interesting.
Oh, really?
But in other states, it might be.
Interesting.
You're right. Every state is different.
The myth of harmlessness is that there's no need for concern because it's a natural substance. The myth for harmfulness is that marijuana today is more dangerous than it was 4 decades ago because it's more potent. The biggest argument that I get about, like, it's almost like when we talk about vaccines, whether you're pro or against it, the one side will always say, well, what about polio? It helped polio. Those kind of, it's like always the comeback. And when you talk about marijuana, it's always like, well, it's better than alcohol or it's better than this drug. But at the levels that it is today, it's very extreme what people can go to and go through. Does it determine have you noticed that the dosages are different for certain people and for certain conditions and those kind of things?
Absolutely. What I know is that everyone's brain is different and nobody processes things the same way or reacts in the same way. So that's where I say cannabis is a unique thing for most, just like alcohol, just like nicotine, just like any substance. You have to, but my definite feeling on it is moderation about everything.
Good. Just once again, this is such a good story, and we'll make sure that we get links to this book for everybody because it's one of the best reads. I mean, it's just a good solid read. So I'm asking her questions from the book specifically because I want to talk about this with the people that are out there. It says that are Americans more accepting of the legalization of marijuana than in the past? Almost 3/4 of Americans support the legalization of marijuana. In a 2010 Pew Research study discovered that 73% of Americans support the sale and use of marijuana for medical purposes if prescribed by a doctor, while 12% supported it back in 1969. The number rose 66% by 2018. How did we get there?
Well, I think that there is more education about it, and it is as medical legalization has happened across the states, more people are aware, and also people are curious. People need options. That's like, and I've listened to a number of your podcasts. And,
thank you.
I absolutely. And we at Amen Clinic are all about options and things like nutritional supplements that can be helpful. People want options. So I try to give people options and open their minds to things, and I like a natural approach. I really do, rather than, prescribing medication or pharmaceutical all the time.
Me too.
But I think that people definitely are much more aware of it. And also because it's been legalized, medically, 2/3 of states are medically legalized, and more are happening every day.
Yeah.
The problem is that physicians don't know enough. When I went to medical school, there was no education about cannabis at all. There was no education about supplements, GABA and 5-HTP and ashwagandha. I've learned so much just in my own journey where I work. So it's been incredible.
I started using ashwagandha in the clinic about, 3 years ago. It changes people. It's really cool. Adaptogens in general are just a really neat form of treatment for people.
And I think that people think of cannabis as a natural substance, but that's another issue, is that cannabis, because it's natural, it can be full of pesticides and contaminants. And,
That's
you know,
good.
how do you regulate the testing of it? And
How do
whether
you
it's,
regulate the testing of it?
well, like CBD, right? That's the non-psychoactive component in cannabis.
Yep.
It's federally, it's FDA approved and federally legal. So there's really not very much testing of it. And so, you know, you want to, if you're gonna, you know, use CBD, which many people want to try and are very interested in, like for its anti-inflammatory processes, you know, for its anxiety properties or anti-anxiety properties, things like that. You want to know that you have, you know, reliable third-party testing. And I've heard that like the European testing is possibly more thorough than the US testing.
I bet. So do you advocate for kind of backing up on marijuana usage for a little bit and trying to figure things out, and then you're never going to back everything back up, right? Like there's no way you can do that.
Out there.
But
it's
if we
out
could,
there, it's not going away.
Yeah. So we could slow it down a little bit and do some more research and see what exactly are we legalizing here? What are we exposing people to? And once again, we're exposing, man, when your 9-year-old asks you about what's that, and you have zero answer for them, but you know that you've seen people use it in the past. You may even experienced it. I mean, who knows what, you know, you just don't know what to say. And then from a medical standpoint, like most people don't know what conditions that you would treat with marijuana. And then this question, and what I landed on in this book, and I think this is a big one. This is probably the biggest thing. Is marijuana addictive? Is it addictive or is it not? Most people would say no. Most people would say I could get off of it, but I think that you've argued the case that it absolutely can be.
Well, and certainly from my clinical experience and people who come and told me, you know, I actually try to help people come off of things like marijuana using other more, you know, natural or holistic remedies.
Yep.
That it may definitely be dependence forming, right? And that, you know, and you might have withdrawal symptoms if you just stop it cold turkey. And
body withdrawals, right? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
just mental stuff. It's your body as well.
Everything. I mean, it can be, you know, psychiatric and it can be physical. Absolutely. You know, so I have a tough time believing that it is not addictive or dependence forming.
I think you're right. And so once again, kind of goes back to your amount that you use. How to the person out there that's using, what do you say to the person out there that's using recreational marijuana and they're 35 years old?
Well, I try to get at the underlying causes of why they're using it, right? And if they're using it for, if we say self-medicating reasons like anxiety or depression, you know, we want to get at the core and the roots of that. Yeah. But if they're using it for, let's say, chronic pain or PTSD, or even, you know, it's medically legal to help people get off opiate abuse, you know, and how do you feel about that? I mean,
oh man,
right. So that's a big, complicated question. The ecosystem of cannabis is huge, and there's so much to learn, and so many areas of it that are unknown to people.
So what's the future of marijuana with you?
Well, definitely I say that your brain is developing and maturing until you're in your mid-20s. You want to stay away from cannabis and all other substances of abuse. May there be uses for cannabis in a moderate way, you know, a way of moderation. Yes, I am definitely waiting for more evidence-based medicine, you know, research that is done in an appropriate way. Yeah. And that may have to come from federally legalizing marijuana.
Yeah, because you think that the research will come with the federalization of it.
Because if it's illegal, you can't federally do research on it, and you need those, you know, the research dollars. They are huge. You need much, you know, to go into doing all kinds of big research studies takes a lot of everything.
So all the research that is being done is like privately funded then, or it's
No. And now that marijuana is much more in the public, awareness and interest, there is definitely much more federally sanctioned research, but there's just not enough. I say it's like it's ass backwards. We put you're putting the cart before the horse. The horse is at the, like it's been there. It's always been there. Now we're trying to figure out how it can be helpful, how it can be harmful, and and in every way try to be balanced about it.
is there a delivery system? So when you do prescribe marijuana, is there a delivery system that you've seen that's best for certain people or certain conditions, or just period?
Well, I say that you don't really want to be smoking or vaping right now in a pandemic, especially one where respiratory issues
Yep.
and certainly vaping or smoking will complicate it. If you're putting anything into your lungs, if you have asthma or if you have chronic lung issues, you definitely don't want to do that. Could edibles be safer, a way to think about it more safely? Well, the problem with edibles is you don't really know how much you're getting. So there's complications from everything.
That's good.
But I do know that you really want to stay away from putting anything into your lungs.
That's good. So yeah, I've heard about these like they call them hot spots or something like that, where they'll have like a brownie, or they'll have like a gummies or something like that. But some of the gummies in the bag will be way more. And so people get different experiences. And yeah, I remember a couple years ago, there was a NBA player maybe that freaked out on a flight after going and using edibles. And so, do you recommend that actually nobody uses it recreationally at all?
I mean, I guess that my recommendation right now is that
Yeah.
there's just not enough research to say that it is safe, and it is safe in the long term. And do we want to advise our children to be safe about it?
That's good.
Absolutely, as parents.
Yep.
And teachers and people who have influence and and can support kids who are thinking about this. Absolutely. I say you must have a good understanding. And I don't think I want my children to be, smoking, vaping, eating edible types of cannabis.
No.
Not now.
No, that's good. That's really good. So yeah, that's the argument with so many people. And you can talk
Well,
about it all day, but that's it.
yeah. The issue is that what usually happens is that as a parent, you're confronted with it. You don't have the opportunity to say no to them, or say be careful and cautious, and you really might want to stay away. It's usually you're sort of slammed over the head with a frying pan with it, and you find out that your kid has tried it.
Totally.
And
But I would say this, what I've learned too is that it doesn't have to be a gateway drug. It doesn't have to be. Totally not. That I think that's part of the myth of cannabis is that if you start using it, you're going to automatically use something else, but that is not the case. Totally not.
well, it's a big debate. So
Yeah.
whether it's is it causation or correlation, right? So causation, meaning if you smoke marijuana, you are more likely to go on to heavier types of drugs. Or if you smoke marijuana, you are more likely to develop psychosis. And that, those are the gateway ideas. But the opposite of it is that that's not necessarily so. That it might be because your peers are trying, and you want these teen years become all about their friends and wanting to be accepted. And that's why I also say you have to know what's going on with your kid. But does it mean that they will become addicted to marijuana or harder things? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But does there need to be more research? Absolutely.
The more that it becomes recreational too, I can't imagine being a kid growing up in this. The access to it, the access is pretty incredible. And once again, the amounts that these children have are way more than than we were kids, or you know, our grandparents, or, and it's incredible. The opioid thing's a big deal in America. Opioids kill people. Absolutely. They kill people, destroy people's lives. They can hurt some people. What would you say? What do you think where does somebody go for, if they want to be treated with cannabis, or if they want to see if that's the right thing for them? Because all medical doctors, once again, don't know exactly the amount. You've done a lot of research, you've studied, and you've been to conferences, and but everybody's not going to the doctor. I've got friends in Florida. They do what they do. They can go to the doctor, and you know, their face hurts, and they'll get a prescription. That's not necessarily the best thing for them. Where does somebody go to actually get a firm recommendation for cannabis?
I think as one who does know and has been researching, and also having the clinical experiences that I have, definitely if someone who is addicted to opioids, you know, comes to me and really honestly discusses what their goals are, then I would set a plan. That's what I would want for most doctors, you know, and most doctors do not have any idea about cannabis or how it could be helpful. And also, not all doctors can certify for medical cannabis. So you have to find a doctor who can do that, and who is aware of then how to set a plan with the patient, you know, to be helpful.
So, okay, so you do, all prescribing doctors have to be certified in cannabis?
Well, so it's also
state dependent?
It's state dependent, but you know, you definitely doctors have to be certified in various ways, meaning they have to have an active medical license. They have to, you know, have taken in New York, it was a 4-hour course. Okay. And then it went on. Once I took the course, I could, you know, and I did all the paperwork, I could start certifying for it. I didn't feel like I was ready to do that.
Totally.
I knew I needed more information. And so that's why I said, I have to learn more. And that's where the book was born. That's where the book was definitely born.
So how do I connect people with the book?
Well, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
And it's called The Brain on Cannabis.
Yep.
Right? And it should be in all the Amen clinics across the country.
Excellent.
And we'll be selling it on the Amen Clinic website.
Okay.
So those are the two main ways to do it.
You have a release date?
It's out there.
Oh, it's been released. Good. Okay, very cool. Because I knew I got this. I think I got this one early. I read this a long time ago, actually.
And it's been changed. I edited and re-edited since then.
Very cool.
No, it came out on September 28th.
Beautiful. Hey, congratulations. And really, once again, as we close the conversation today, this is one of the most thorough books on cannabis that I've ever read. I don't think there's really research that I've seen that connects the good and the bad, the science and the story, and helping you make some decisions about maybe this is the future of your healthcare, but maybe you've actually been using it the wrong way, or whatever that is. So connect with Dr. Rebecca and at the Amen Clinics. And so, anything else you would have my listeners hear from you today?
It's been such an incredible journey for me, and I so appreciate being on your podcast today as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And this will be airing pretty soon. So, hey, have a great weekend, and I'm sure that we'll talk again soon. Okay.
I would love that.
All right. See you. Bye.